Everyone, and welcome to the Secret Art of Business. And today I have the great pleasure of having the one and only Don DePerro as my guest today. And you, sir, are a get. I mean, everybody wants to see you, be around you. You're a local celebrity, and I think you're going to totally work on being a national one. I think more and more with the work that you're doing with the Columbus Chamber, where you are CEO and president. Is that your whole title?
You're hired as our publicist, Catherine. You're hired as my personal publicist, for sure.
Welcome, Don.
President and Chief Executive Officer, for what it's worth. President.
Welcome, and thanks again for doing this. Let's just go ahead and start off by talking about, just your work at the Columbus Chamber. How did you get here, for one? And what is it that you like about what you do?
Yeah, I wonder that quite a bit myself, Catherine.
You have a great story.
I ponder the answer to that question quite a bit. It's funny because I went to a school like St. Charles here. It was a private boys college prep Christian Brothers school in Buffalo, New York, my hometown. And this is God's honest truth. I flunked geometry and had to go to summer school for geometry, but I was exempt from my English finals because my class average in English was so high. So it was pretty clear that I wasn't going to be an engineer. And, and I always liked writing, which was kind of funny because I haven't done as much of that as I'd like. But so journalism, 35 years. Interestingly, I started with Gannett. I don't know how far you want me to go back, but I started with Gannett, which owned the daily newspaper in Niagara Falls, New York, which is called the Niagara Gazette. And now they own the Dispatch. That's the parent company of the Dispatch, which is really interesting. And then I went to, 32 years with the parent company of Columbus Business First, 4 different cities, my hometown of Buffalo, then Charlotte, North Carolina, Jacksonville, Florida, my first publisher's gig. I was editor-in-chief in Charlotte, publisher in Jacksonville, and then publisher here for over 20 years. But I always, I wanted to do one other thing. I said that, and I made no bones about it, that I wanted to do one other thing, just maybe to satisfy, my wife has always said that I'm the original attention deficit hyperactivity disorder patient. That ailment was, if you look it up in the dictionary, my picture's next to ADHD. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to make light of a serious ailment.
No, but, you're preaching to the choir with this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And they say something like 35% of CEOs are some level of ADHD. But I just wanted to do something different. And interestingly, the two things, people say, well, what did you want to do? I wanted to do high-level recruitment, so portfolio creative. I wanted to do C-suite recruitment. I think that's something that I would have been pretty good at because I think I have a talent for identifying talent. Or the second thing was economic development. I loved economic development, and I used to always take, when I had the time, if somebody said, hey, I'm between jobs, I'm looking for something, I'd say, I'll give you half an hour. And of course, it invariably became an hour or longer. But and the only thing I asked was, when you land, let me know. And when somebody landed and they gave me that phone call, it was the happiest day, just knowing that maybe a little bit of our conversation may have helped them in some way. So here I am at the Columbus Chamber of Commerce.
I honestly think it's like the perfect progression because, when you go back to journalism, it's really just storytelling and connecting dots and connecting people and all that sort of stuff. And that is kind of what you've kind of done here. You connect people, you get people in the right places, helping people, build their businesses. And I don't think any of that could have happened if you did not have that prep prior to that. And I think you definitely found your spot. But as you know, I'm a fan. So
well, it's interesting. I don't mean to.
No, go ahead.
This is going to sound less than modest, but I tried to count up my emails handwritten notes, phone calls, in person, and I had over 300 congratulations, which
That's
was
fantastic.
incredibly humbling and heartwarming. And probably 250 people said, "This is the perfect job for you."
Yes.
And that just meant so much that
Mm-hmm.
they thought my skill set from being president and publisher of Columbus Business First, migrating those skills over to the Columbus Chamber of Commerce, people said, perfect. It's absolutely perfect for you.
It's very reassuring because we're kind of stepping a little bit into the unknown there, and everybody's like, no, right step. You made the right step, so that's really
Yeah.
cool. I'm going to dial back a little bit because
Okay.
I talked about journalism, and we're going to talk about even a younger Don. So when you were a kid in Buffalo growing up, what were some of the things that you used to do for fun?
Um, I love sports. I love sports. Baseball was probably my best sport. I played college baseball, actually, Division III. I don't talk about it too much because it was a long time ago, but I did play. I made it's it's Buffalo State University, and it was Division III. But I made the varsity baseball team as a freshman, and I was the backup catcher. The starting catcher was a senior. Um, but I played hockey in high school, junior varsity. I never played varsity, and played everything. Our elementary school had a football team. We were the only school team in the league. There were mostly community teams, and I played football for a couple of years. But I love baseball, and I still think it's a fabulous sport. Um, and I was just a normal kid, and back then, we had a ton of kids in the neighborhood, and we could go to, back then it was Delaware Park, and you could go there and your parents wouldn't have to worry about you too much. You can kind of go unsupervised, and you're with all your buddies, and we brought our bats and our balls and our gloves, and we'd pick up games. And we didn't have the structure in the sports like my children had, where I remember moving here, which is now 28 years ago, and Adam was 4 and Amanda was 2.5. And at 5, now they're 31 and 30, and putting Adam in soccer and offering to help out with the team. In his very first game, these were 5-year-olds. The other coach showed up with a full Adidas suit with the soccer shoes and the hat. He had a whistle. He had, I thought this was one of Ohio State's assistant coaches, the D1, but it was just, and I thought, God, I did not, and when we played growing up, we fought, we argued, but we learned how to resolve our differences. And if we fought one day, we were still best friends the next day. And we had arguments and altercations, but we didn't have parental supervision, and we didn't have coaches. And I think we learned how to resolve differences,
Yes.
and I think that made a huge difference to me. And in our neighborhood, I was like the youngest guy. Most of my friends were 2 grades ahead or 3 grades ahead, so I got picked on a lot, and you had to stand up for yourself. And they knew that the little guy was probably going to get beat up, but he was going to try to get his shots in before. And I'm not saying I grew up in a tough neighborhood or anything like. I'm not, but
No.
you develop coping skills, and you grow up, and you learn a lot. You learn a
Yeah.
lot growing up in a neighborhood like that. Um,
Now, how did you get involved with writing though? When did you know that you loved writing, or when did you start writing?
that's a great. In 7th grade, we had a student newspaper at St. Mark's Elementary School in North Buffalo. It's called the Marksman, and they might have let 6th graders, but it was primarily 7th and 8th graders. You couldn't write, and if I'm not dating myself, I wrote a profile on J. Edgar Hoover, who was the FBI director. And this is before we knew he was who he really was.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I went to the library and got the encyclopedia, and I got other, magazines. I remember articles in Time magazine. We subscribed to Time magazine, and we got two daily newspapers back then, the Buffalo News and the Buffalo Courier Express. Um, and I did research and I wrote it. And when I found out it was accepted, and then it was on page 2, and it was a longer article, and it was on the inside front cover of the Marksman. I remember I couldn't wait to get home and show my parents that I had a byline in 7th grade. And I think I think the response to it and how it was read I'm the youngest of 4. So how it was read by my siblings, and the attention it got, and that left an indelible impression on me. And again, not the best math student, good in some maths, not it. I'm good with numbers. I'm good with, budgeting, that sort of thing. But
Yeah,
not
but
formulating
we all
things.
have our strengths, and it sounds like that's kind of when you discovered yours. It's like, you know what, maybe I'm good at this, you know?
Right. And I really liked it. And especially enjoyed talking to people about in advance. And because I was a better reporter than I was a writer. And, as editors, if you're a good reporter, you get different assignments than the writers. So
What was it
that
about reporting that you really liked?
I was always interested in other people. Um, I was always interested in other people. And it's funny because I had this conversation. We were just in Raleigh over the weekend at my wife's younger brother's family, and he has 2 boys and his wife has 2 girls, and they're the same age. We call them 2/3 of the Brady Bunch. And I was talking to them about everybody having a story. And I said, be careful not to dismiss people because of what they look like or where they come from or what their beliefs may be. Because everyone has their story. And, you can, this is in the, here I go, it just cut me off, Catherine. But, in the Chinese culture, the elderly are really highly treasured and valued and thought well of because they've learned so much. They've got a world of wisdom, a lifetime of knowledge and wisdom, and they're held in such high regard. And it really hurts me when I hear that, you know, well experienced people in our society are dismissed because they shouldn't be, because everyone has their story. And I was always intrigued by people's story.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And to have people that have an interest in that and getting those stories out, I think is equally as important. We're going to fast forward to now you're at the chamber. And do you get any opportunity to do any writing anymore? Or is it just more heavily into kind of an elevated form of reporter that you get to do now?
That's a great, I really regret that I didn't keep a diary. I really regret, really regret that I haven't kept one in years, um, because I probably had 3 books so far, um, and they would have been pretty decent. Um, but I may have a book in me yet. So that may be, a retirement or semi-retirement project. Um, so as far as writing, I use, I do more editing now. Like, even if I'm asked for a quote for a story, a news story or something like that, I'll let somebody else who knows it prepare it, and then I'll do the editing or try to put it in my verbiage so it sounds like it's something that would have come from me, what I said. Um, and it's, Catherine, more than anything else, it's just time. It's just time. When people ask us who are your competitors? And this was my answer in all my years as a journalist. I said, we compete with time. We compete against time, that we have to generate, we have to, create a product that's so valuable that someone will take the time to read it, that it will be more important than anything else they're doing at that time, so that they will commit to reading our or coming to one of our events or making a connection by what we do. So I always say, that we compete with time because you have to create something that's so valuable that someone will set aside everything else they're doing to make time for you.
Yeah, and I think that resonates perfectly with what you do now because you are working with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners and business leaders, and time is very important for them too. And you're essentially saying, I want you to come to my event. I want you to see this as an important thing that you take the time to come out and do. And that messaging is important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if anything, your editing skills would be more important than ever, just to kind of look at how some of the messages come out. Not that you're having any issues right now, because I think your marketing team is great. But even when you talk about some of these events, what is it that makes these things important? Because I know for myself, I have to be choosy. There are a lot of events to choose from, and which ones are worth my time. And as you know, I'm at a
Not
lot of
only
chamber
that,
events, so therefore, I believe they
right,
are worth my time.
right. You're so right, Catherine. But not only that, but like social media. I pour over my posts before I hit send. And part of the reason is the written word really lacks context. And if somebody said, well, you were a reporter, what were your skills? And I said, I really, really focused. If there's anything that I hyperventilated over, was choosing the most appropriate word that put the facts that I was relaying or portraying in the proper context. Because, the context can determine the quality of the message. And you could easily give something an entirely different definition by misconstruing the context. So I'm really careful, even in a LinkedIn post, or I'm giving my Facebook a little rest. I haven't been on Facebook for a while, but because context is just so very, very important, so important. And
I
I find
agree. And
myself,
sometimes just one word can change the whole meaning or be taken out of
absolutely,
context, and that's not the intent.
especially in emails and in emails to our 6 vice presidents. I don't want them saying, "Oh my God, what is Don thinking now?" Or am I, I say, so I'm very careful with the context because I don't want them to think, that's why we have emojis in social media, right? That's why we have emojis. Emojis help display the context. I'm
Yes.
laughing because it's meant to be a joke. Okay.
I am laughing at this because
Right.
I have been victim of this, where I will treat emails just kind of like a quick message thing. Hey, has anybody done X? And people will
Throws the
say,
whole staff into a tizzy. It throws the whole staff. It becomes, it goes
"Oh
to,
my
it
God,
shifts to panic mode,
Catherine thinks I'm
right?
failing at my job because she just did a follow up email about something. So now I have to put the little smiley face and, things like
Yes.
that." And I'm like, okay, I get it. I get it. But
Right.
very, very true.
Emojis were totally created to formulate context, right?
I think, yeah, or for me to bail out the very direct boss.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
There
don't
you
have time
go.
for a long note. Come on, did you
Well,
do it
that's
or not?
exactly it. It's not that you're not. It's a time issue. It's a time
Yeah.
issue. You can't
Yep.
take a half hour on every email. You just can't.
Right. Right. Oh, that's so funny. I'm glad other people have that issue. All right. So what's next? What's next for you? We know you're writing the book, so I'm looking very forward to that.
Well, yeah, I
And
better.
and you said you still would like to do some things at the chamber, which I think is great. And you don't need to kind of disclose some of that because I know some of the things are still cooking. But
Right.
ultimately, when you leave, and I'm only bringing that up because, and honestly, I think you could stay there as long as you wanted, but I think ultimately you would like to retire. When that happens, what would you like to have had done, completed with your job here at the chamber?
Yeah, there is one more. I've already called it my legacy project, and I want to be really careful because this will
You don't have to
have to
disclose
be a
anything.
theme. Well, it involves workforce because
Yep.
I think whether the economy is good or whether the economy is bad, or whether there are, you know, right now there are still more job openings than there are people looking for jobs right now. And that's in the state of Ohio. That's, I think, nationwide. It may have just met somewhere, but we have to do better on the whole workforce ecosystem. So that's something we're going to focus on. And I, I'm probably going to work another year and a half, 2 years tops. I mean, when you publish this, I'll probably be I'll be Medicare eligible. To turn 65 next month. But I feel great, and I've worked really hard on taking better care of myself, which is something I hope to do, continue. But I just I got great advice, and I'm going to say his name, by John Beto, a longtime co-worker who, when I was publisher of the Jacksonville paper, he was publisher in Tampa, and he said to me, leave it, he said, treat it like you borrowed it. Leave it in better shape than when you got it. He said, when you walk down the street, if your lawnmower is on the blink and you got to borrow your neighbor's lawnmower, what are you going to do, right? When you're done with it, you're going to hose it all off. You're going to get all the grass off it. You're going to fill it with gas, and you're going to put a little spit shine on it and bring it back. And they're going to open it up to fill it and say, oh, Don filled the gas tank. Oh, Don washed the grass off it. Wow, it looks pretty good. Well, that's, how we should treat our positions in life, right? Treat it, when you handed it back over or hand it to the next person, make sure it's in better shape than it was when it was handed to you. And there are varying degrees on that, of course, but, I didn't know what I was facing when I came to the chamber. I know it wasn't ideal, but until you get into it, you don't know, and
Right.
then, and it was pretty bad. So we had a lot of work to do, and I don't want, it's interesting because people started leaving as I was continuing to explain the vision and the mission and what we hope to do and they all got great jobs. It wasn't like I was not, I like to think I'm a developer, Catherine, and I
Hmm.
think that in me. I wasn't going to come in and clean house. It's not my nature. It's not,
Right.
but we're going to ask people to maybe do things different. And I was trying to match the skill set that I inherited with the work that needed done. And some of them, there was no work available for the skills that I was inheriting. So we had to have some challenging conversations.
Oh,
So
absolutely. And I think that's actually a really great message for people that are entrepreneurs or business leaders, is especially if you're coming into a new role or you're starting to build a new team, is that not everybody is the right person. Sometimes they self-select, which kind of happened with you. It's like, either I'm going to follow this leader or I'm not. And that's what leadership's about.
right.
And to your point, they were all great people. They found great work elsewhere. But then with what you wanted to do, you attracted great leaders again, so
Right.
chamber is running on all cylinders, I think, right now, and you should be very proud of what you've done.
Well, thanks. That you don't know, as a board member, Catherine, one of my treasured board members, what that
Self-disclosure
means.
there. Yes, I am also a board member.
Right. And you can't, like, I'm not so insecure as to not been able to hire people better than me. I hire people smarter than me, more talented, better work ethic. I mean, I hire really good people, and I'm not so insecure as to say, "Oh shit, they may want my job." Um, I want them to want my job. I want my successor, in my position. I want to have that person right there in line. I want three people in line behind me,
Hmm.
um, because they're going to make you look good. They're going to be, if you're, they're going to make you look at, and you end up doing even better, as a
Oh,
result.
absolutely.
You
They
know,
make
uh,
you look good.
they make,
They look good.
yeah,
You
yeah,
make
yeah.
you look
One
good.
of the leaders can never be afraid to hire people better than them. They
Yeah,
can't.
that is actually a great pro tip too, because you know what your strengths are, And it's like, this is going to be my space. I'm going to try and be the leader here, but you're going to have to own your space and just be the best at it, because that's going to make
Right.
the whole thing work. So yeah, don't fear the people that are smarter than you. And when we say that, that's in certain areas, because I think the person at the top does need to be the smartest at the leadership and kind of what you do with the connections and, keeping things rolling. Because if anyone has had the pleasure of being in the room with you, Don, you know that you know how to work a room, you know how to get people engaged and connected. And I think it really falls in line, again, with what you've done and where you want this to go. The fact that you're talking about this workforce, I think, talks about everything that you did. It's about people's stories. It's a little bit about that executive search thing you were kind of talking about, connecting people for work and things like that. And it's all just kind of come together to leave this legacy. So it's really kind of cool.
This has been, I had a wonderful 35 years in publishing, an incredible 35 years. I had a lot of difficulty. I had a lot of challenges, but I wouldn't trade those for the world.
Oh, no.
But this has been extraordinarily rewarding.
That's the way it should
Because
be.
I think the Chamber of Commerce is a community jewel. I think it really is, and it was the polish had been worn off. We had to polish that gemstone again, and to see what we're doing, and in a couple of ways we're different than 99% of the chambers of commerce in this country, in our in how we work with our members, and in how our membership is obtained, and our membership levels of membership. So this has just been so rewarding and gratifying and fun. And when it's that, it's not work. When it's all of that, it's not work.
Yes,
It really isn't.
absolutely.
It
And
really
that's
isn't.
what's really important about making sure that you are, doing the fun stuff along with the work part, because then it never feels like work. It's just like, what do I get to do today versus, what do I have to do today?
Yep, that's exactly it.
Well, again, Don, thanks for all you've done for the chamber. I think a lot of people think that, the Chamber of Commerce is kind of an old institution, but I think you've kind of made it cool again. And hopefully other people can, learn from your insight and what you've done to turn the chamber around here in Columbus, Ohio. Because that, if anything, that could be a little bit of your legacy too, by teaching other people.
It's interesting. We did look, and because you've been involved with the strategy committee, we've looked at the possibility of renaming the chamber, or giving it a different, one of these different. But then it would need a subtitle. Then you'd have to say, "Oh, we're the Chamber of Commerce."
Explain it then. Yeah,
we'd have to explain it. So why create that much confusion?
Right.
So we're the Columbus. Really, legally, we're the Greater Columbus Chamber of Commerce. If anything, I'd like to name it the Columbus Region Chamber. The Columbus Region Chamber, which I think makes a lot of sense, because we do serve 11 counties.
We're very close to all of our sister cities that surround us. So
yes, we are. We are a great region. Well,
thank you so much for your time, Don. I really, really appreciate it. I think you have given people a lot of wisdom, just as far as leadership goes. And I think it was also a great story that you have yourself, as far as how you got where you are, because, you could resonate with that kid who's either playing baseball now or he's in journalism, and realize, it doesn't have to be just this. It could be so much more. It could be so much bigger.
And Catherine, thank you. I can't thank you enough. You've been with me this entire journey, now 7.5 years at the chamber, which is absolutely amazing. And I can't thank you enough. If we could have permanent chamber board members, you would be at the top of the list.
I think we're probably leaving at about the same time. We're going to just go out in a blaze of glory.
That's exactly right. They still don't know what hit them. So
exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm flattered and honored you included me on your podcast. And if I have any last thing to say, join the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.